Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Did say that if I could try and fit in a video from across the Atlantic I would, and it just so happened that got in from a long day here in Charleston, and there was a spot of time to chuck one together, especially as I'd watched the game earlier today. Feels like a lifetime ago because kind of watching it far earlier in the day than you would certainly be watching it back in the UK, anyone over that side of the Atlantic. And I think this is going to go out probably in the morning for those in the UK, but for me, I'm filming it quite late at night here in Charleston, which is it's very warm. It's very warm. For people of Charleston, it's probably very mild, but for the likes of us who aren't used to in the UK weather's at 28, 29 temperatures in late October going into November. Yeah, you can see why I'm a bit red-faced. But it's a beautiful place. If you get a chance to come to Charleston, it is a lovely part of the world. It's it's different to most other places I've been to in America. It's certainly got its own vibe. Very laid back, very cool place. But we're talking about Tottenham. We are talking about Tottenham Hotspur. I have managed to watch both games to varying degrees of kind of, how do I put this? One of them was on my phone. Today's one was on my phone, so it was very much kind of actually no, both were on my phone, trying to watch them in certain ways, and it's not the same obviously as being in the stadium and having a view across everything and the dugout, the touchline, what's going on there, runs off the ball, things like that. So as I've said before, whenever I do these videos that aren't having me being at a match, they're always going to be much shorter. Just me kind of really giving my thoughts on what I saw rather than talking too much around things. But on the whole, hey, they've continued the run. 7 wins out of 8 now. Another clean sheet as well. 3 wins out of 3 in the Europa League. Quite a commanding position really in that as well, which is, it's great really because it takes the pressure of what they're doing and the team lineups and the performances of the players. They can kind of know they can get away with an iffy result now. That's obviously not going to be the aim in any way. So it's not going to be, there's not going to be taking a foot off the pedal in that respect. It's going to be just that, it just allows them to have this little bit of comfort in what they're doing. And yeah, how do I put this? It wasn't an incredible performance. It was a workmanlike performance. Had some little flashes of some good stuff. Some moments that we can definitely talk about that were very good. Some moments not so good. But ultimately, again, clean sheet, win in Europe, 7 out of 8. It's you can't moan too much about it. I know some people are clearly going to keep rewriting kind of what's allowed and all this sort of stuff, and then they should be beating these teams anyway. But I keep hearing that phrase, but that's always been my biggest issue with Spurs is they don't beat the teams that they should win. So kind of when they do and they go on a run of actually doing that, I don't think it should be a case of, well, it should be beating them anyway. It should be a case of, finally, there you go. That's what you should be doing. Brilliant. Keep going. I don't know, but it's almost seen as a negative thing. I don't get it. I don't get it. I for a brief moment kind of looked on social media after the game. I was like, nope, no, that's fine. Go back to my holiday. But as for the game itself, of course, probably for most people, there was one standout thing in this game. Tottenham against RZ. That's probably Mikey Moore, isn't it? I just cannot believe he's only 17 August. It's just mad how young he is, yet how at home he looks playing for Tottenham Hotspur. By the way, I apologise if I'm quiet and you can't hear any aspects of this. I don't know. But I am, of course, in a hotel and it's a little bit late at night and I'm trying not to wake everyone up. Mrs. Gold is awake. She's listening to music, so she's not being bothered by me at all right now. Hopefully. Mikey Moore, though, it's just so cool to watch. That's probably the biggest kind of thing we're all taking from these games is that Mikey Moore is kind of having his top flight first team education in these matches, and we've seen this before with certain players over the years, and I kind of think it's also happening to a degree with Spurs when it comes to Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall as well, that they're having these games to bed themselves into the way of playing, and just to kind of get, even for Archie Gray and actually Lucas as well, they've both got a lot of first team football under the belt relatively, especially compared to someone like Mikey Moore. But they're not used to this kind of European football. I know it's not the top tier European football, but they're playing some decent sides. These are sides that aren't the easiest teams to go out there and beat, and have a certain way of playing, and it's good for them. And for Mikey, it's just a brilliant education. It is. We saw it in a way with players like Harry Kane. Harry Kane's a good example of a player who was kind of almost. Yes, he went off and had his loan, so that's slightly different. But when it comes to his Tottenham performances, we probably saw more of him in Europe to begin with, and especially that season under Pochettino when he really broke through. It was because of his performances in Europe that made it difficult for Poch really to ignore him. And of course, the fact that it was Adebayor and Soldado, it would have been, wasn't it, at the time, who weren't really doing the business in front of goal, and his case just became stronger and stronger and stronger. Who knows? That could end up being the case with young Mikey Moore, despite the fact he's far younger than Harry Kane is. And yes, it is a prerequisite that we have to say young Mikey Moore. That is actually his first name is Young. But I felt he, early on in the game, he obviously had the early header, which he put just wide. And Postecoglou, after the game, I listened to the interviews and the press conference stuff, and that was one of his things. It's like, that's where he's still developing. That's where he's still, of course, he is only 17. He's got so much more to his game to enhance and grow, which should terrify opposition players everywhere, because he's just going to be incredible. But obviously heading is one of them. And it's kind of like a sliding doors moment maybe for Timo Werner, which we'll talk about as well. He puts the ball across and Mikey just flicks and glances the header just wide. I wouldn't say, he had an amazing performance, Mikey, in the first half on the right, which is a position he's been playing under Ange so far, kind of under him. But we know it's probably not the more natural position he normally plays. He'll either play on the left, seen him do it for Spurs a lot of times, for England's youth teams as well, that cutting in from the left-hand side. And we saw it to devastating effect in the second half against RZ. We've also seen him play centrally as well for Spurs Academy, where he can play very well as kind of like a number 10 type. And that switch in the second half to put him onto that left, James Maddison said it himself, didn't he, after the game? He said something like between 45 minutes and 65 minutes, I thought we had Neymar on the left wing. And it's of course, it's a huge compliment. And Postecoglou was very amusing afterwards. I saw about it and just saying, look, well, I can't keep a lid on it now if he's gone and compared him to Neymar and things like that. And but just that little run of 20 minutes or so, it was. I'm going to do my own comparison now. And yeah, look, I'm not comparing it to the same level. I'm comparing it to the same kind of thing. But it felt a little bit to me, in terms of one player terrifying another player, a little bit like Bale against Maicon. And I'm not saying it's the same level or anything. I'm not saying it's a Champions League game against Inter Milan, against Maicon, who's one of the biggest and best Brazil internationals at the time, kind of right backs. But it was just in the essence, in the very kind of essence of a winger beating his man over and over and over again. That was what it felt like to me. I saw it and it just had those little kind of chills of one day we'll see him at that level. Because he was just destroying the fullback every time. There was one run he went on, it just went past so many people. And that was one, it wasn't it? Ended with him passing to Brennan Johnson. Brennan Johnson had it was almost one of those, I think, because of his confidence, Brennan Johnson, he took it. And I didn't actually feel he had to take it. It was one of those where whether he could have taken a touch as if he was about to shoot, and the defender maybe would have gone across to try and block a shot that didn't happen and maybe comes inside. Maybe I'm just saying that with hindsight, probably doing that. But yeah, that was one lovely run from Mikey. There was another one where he cut inside and swung this lovely ball across the box, which a few players slid in for and couldn't quite get it. That was a lovely one. And there was another one where I think, if I remember, he did a lovely little dribble, got to the byline and cut it across. And it was the perfect Postecoglou ball. It was where he loves it, in between the keeper and the defenders, and like who's going to get it, and nobody committed to it. He was just sublime, let's be honest. For someone that turned 17 a couple of months ago, it's just ridiculous performance. It was so good. And it is, we're getting to that stage now where it's becoming more and more difficult, I think, for him to be ignored when it comes to getting bigger moments or bigger amounts of time or even starts in Premier League games. You do have to take it carefully. I know people don't like to hear that, but Postecoglou spoke really well about him in the press conference afterwards, essentially saying, look, you've got to... It's about, I've said this before, it's about not stunting the development. You've got to use them the right way. And we're seeing so many young players that are going on to have so many injury problems as well, so many of them. Whether it is later on when they just get accumulation of these injuries because they started so early, or whether even in these early kind of formative years they're picking up lots of problems, because let's be honest, without doing like a biology lesson or anything, their bodies are still growing. But you didn't think this was going to end up being some kind of science class. It's just obvious. I'm not teaching anyone anything there. It's obvious they're kind of, their body shape is changing, and he's still, I think Mikey is going to get... probably going to get taller as well. He's probably going to broaden a lot. I always remember Steven Gerrard, when he was young, he used to get a lot of back problems early on. They kind of had to limit his playing time because his body was still growing and he was trying to essentially do the workload that an adult would do, and he wasn't quite ready for that. So yeah, I want to see Mikey Moore. I'd love to see him start in every single game, but realistically, we're probably not at that stage yet. But I think we're going to get to see a lot more of him. And I do think days like yesterday it will be for you guys, it's not for me. Timo Werner, with performances like he did, with his just confidence, rock bottom, you could see it. It's only going to kind of give Mikey more chances as well as a knock-on effect. Like I said, maybe that sliding door moment, that ball that goes across, and Mikey just, ironically, maybe... Mikey's one moment where it didn't quite work for him ended up being the moment that defined the rest of the team. I was going, I think that's way too harsh. I'm not saying it's his fault. Absolutely not. It's on a 28-year-old Champions League winner to kind of make his own luck, make his own confidence. I know that. Just as I was saying that, I was just thinking in my back of my head, someone's going to say that you're saying it's Mikey Moore's fault. I'm not. It's sad that I have to say these things, but you know how it goes. But yeah, just with Werner, it was all there to see, and we're seeing it unfortunately now in a consistent basis of he's getting put through on goal so many occasions now, and he just panics or kind of hits a weak shot, which is what we saw again today. He was put through by Berryvale, put him through, and he just hits this really kind of tame shot at the goalkeeper. And I think there was another one where I can't remember who it was. Someone put him through down the left. Might have even been Mikey Moore. I can't remember. But he hits the ball just kind of... It was just too far in front of him, I think, and he's kind of almost forcing... It's almost like a slide, almost, to try and get it, and he knocks into the side netting. And it's just really sad to see, because you can... Even Postecoglou admitted afterwards, you can see his confidence isn't good. It's not. And there's the two sides to it, because... taking him off at half-time, it's not going to help his confidence. Of course it's not. It's only kind of shining a spotlight even harsher on it. But also, you can't carry passengers. You can't carry people that are just, going to miss these chances. You need, no wonder, he's swapping in with Brendan Johnson, a man who has scored, before that game, 7 in 8 games and is an absolute clinical player right now, full of confidence. You have to make those changes. I don't think you can disagree with it. Fingers crossed, that Timo Werner finds a way back to the player he can be, because way back in his career, he was a prolific goal scorer. But it's just, something's got to click for him, something. But right now, I think he's putting himself beneath Mikey Moore in the pecking order, even despite the age that Mikey is. I think we're at a position now where it just makes no real sense for Mikey, not to be the first one that Postecoglou turns to on that bench ahead of Timo Werner. Obviously, Wilson Odobert may change that. His return just came on late in the game for Mikey Moore. I think it was. That may change that in terms of he might be with the more experienced, the one that comes on first, but Mikey's doing everything he can to change that, and fair play to him. But who else can we kind of stood out for? Fraser Forster. I think Fraser Forster deserves plenty of praise. I thought he did really, really well. Bearing in mind, obviously, kind of the flack he'd had in the past, especially against Coventry and in the first European game as well, wasn't it? What was the first one? No, it was the last one, wasn't it? Yes, of course it was, because it was when Dragoshin got sent off. I thought he played really well in quite a few aspects as well against RZ. I thought there was obviously the fantastic one-handed save was terrific, but he also rushed out of his goal really well, dealt with a few situations on the edge of the box, and also his play with his feet I thought was excellent. His passing was really good. He kept finding that man coming back into a deeper position to spin the ball out to the flanks, did that really well. I thought Fraser Forster has an excellent game. I thought it was just what he needed. And again, we've spoken a million times now about the whole Fraser Forster or Jed Spence debate. Obviously, right now, I can't remember if Jed was on the bench or not tonight. Tonight, that's so confusing. For me, it was way earlier in the day. For you, it's not tonight because it's the next day. But obviously Jed's been injured anyway, so maybe a moot point right now. But performances like that from Fraser Forster kind of show that if he's needed later in the season, maybe these are the games where he's been getting his sharpness, and Postecoglou may be able to point to that and say, well, that's the reason. We'll see, because I still do feel at the moment we're having to play people like a Destiny Doggy's going to have to play, and in the next game, maybe Pedro Porro plays or something like that, and they keep having to rotate who's in that back four, and of course that's without further injuries. Forster I thought played well. I thought Bentancur was good, really composed. I thought the way he played, that ball over the top to Maddison in the build-up to the penalty was beautiful. I thought Maddison himself, captain for the day, was very good, very creative. I thought he responded really well to... Don't forget, he was taken off at half-time against West Ham, which would have absolutely, rankled with him. That would have really annoyed him. And at half-time, we'll talk about the West Ham game briefly in a mo, but that, that could have been a big risk, but in the end was an absolute spot-on decision from Postecoglou. And Maddison then had to kind of prove why, in his mind, it wasn't. And... it wasn't the right one. And I thought he was excellent. I thought he was one of Spurs' best players on the day. Who else? The penalty itself was an interesting kind of moment. It was in the end, it was Berval who got brought down as he kind of ran onto it. Berval had an all right game. I still feel he's getting up to the tempo of what Spurs are meant to be playing as. And does a lot of great things. It was a really early, lovely kind of pirouette, wasn't there? But there's still a couple of moments where just takes that extra second. And I think that's the difference between the level he's been playing at to the level that he's now at. I think playing international football is going to help him a little bit with that as well. But also all of these European games are really going to help him because there's an incredible talent there. Of course there is. But it's just getting used to that extra... the tempo really, just the speed of the game and not having as long on the ball as maybe he's been used to in the past. But he did well to get into a good position as well. He needed these minutes, didn't he, after the Dragoshin sending off. I'm talking about the last... I'm getting confused with my games now, aren't I? It was the last home game, wasn't it, that Dragoshin was sent off. Sorry, I'll blame it on the time difference, even though I've been here a few days now and I'm absolutely not jet lagged at all. But the penalty itself, of course, there was a little moment where we weren't entirely sure who was going to take it. Richarlison had it. There was a little bit of a debate going on. Bentancur spoke to him. I think Brennan Johnson spoke to him. Of course, Maddison, who was the one that was kind of ready to take the penalty. And it looked like Maddison was going to take it. And then a decision was made by Maddison, it seems, to give it to Richarlison. And I think it's the right call. In terms of Richarlison, and again, we're talking about confidence, and strikers need confidence, and Maddison's got a couple of goals this season. He started the season pretty well on the whole. I think Richarlison needed that, first start, first goal. And it was a cheeky penalty. Can we technically call it a Panenka? It was certainly a clip down the middle, and it showed real confidence in that moment. And Yeah, I liked it. And it was good for him. I mean, he got a fair few minutes in the game as well. Obviously, got cramp as it wore on, which was understandable. But yeah, I thought he did fine. Didn't get a ton of service, but he did okay with what kind of came to him. And yeah, to walk away with a goal, that's going to be great for him, as likely to come on at some point against Palace at the weekend. But yeah, I forgot to say about Mikey Moore. One of the little, excuse me, I'm kind of doing this weird half volume voice, and actually that's killing my throat more than just talking normally. Postecoglou was speaking about Mikey Moore. I saw in his interview, I think it was the club interview, where he said, look, it's clear he's going to be a special player for us. I love that. That's just a huge pat on the back for such a young player. And he was talking a lot about the fact that none of this will faze Mikey. None of this at all. He's not going to, having Maddison comparing him to Neymar, having Postecoglou tell him he's going to be a special player for the club, doesn't inflate his ego, doesn't make him think he's made it. He's just a very hard-working young player, and he'll just keep going. He's got belief in himself, but it's not an arrogant belief. It's just a kind of a knowledge of, okay, that's what I can do, but I know that I've got to do all of this to be what I want to be. And it's such an important thing. I have interviewed, apologies if anyone's heard me say this before, but previously used to kind of work in lower league football and write about non-league as well. And the amount of players that I used to speak to who had dropped out of Premier League academies, and you could just tell from them that they just had this kind of belief, almost like a kind of like a God-given right or something, that they should be playing Premier League football. And this was just a temporary stop-off in non-league or lower football league levels. And they were going to get that back there, because they're talented. They've got the ability. And you could pretty much tell that 99% of them were never going to make it back to that level, because they didn't just have that little thing inside that told them. They just had to work incredibly hard, soak up every bit of information they could, and learn from all of these players around them. They kind of almost believed in themselves more than anything else that could happen in their own kind of experience and education. And you just get the sense that's not the case with Mikey at all. From everyone I've spoken to about him, that's what they all say, is that he just listens. He's a great listener, takes everything on board, and just works incredibly hard. And that's the key to it. And hopefully then it's down to a little bit of luck, injuries and things like that, and getting your chances and opportunities that suddenly arise sometimes. But yeah, if he keeps going how he's going, he'll be starting Premier League games. I don't think it will be that far in the future, to be honest. I think we're in the coming months we'll see that happen, because Postecoglou can trust him as well. That's the key. There's other elements to a game, of course. Tracking back, defending. He's going to have to do a lot of that. You see someone like Brennan Johnson, who works so incredibly hard in his defensive side of his game. It often goes completely unnoticed, but he's doing all of that as well. And that's something Mikey's got to bring to it as well. But if you're looking for attacking kind of fluency and like someone that can just, some of those runs were just remarkable. It was taking like 2-3 players out of the game. It was just mad, absolutely mad. But great to watch, terrific for us. And I think overall as a team, there are other good performances within there. I thought Destiny Udogie played pretty well as well. Centre backs kept their clean sheet. Both had a couple of moments where you'd be like, ugh. There was one where Davies was beaten in the air a little bit too easily, maybe. You could call it a foul. I mean, he was claiming for a foul. Dragishin had a couple of moments on the ball where perhaps he could have been a little bit better as well. Archie Gray worked incredibly hard, had a bit of a tough task at times, but I think, again, it's more for his experiences, and it's all good for him, really. I'm trying to think if I've missed anyone out. I don't think I have. No, I think that's everyone covered kind of mainly, and then you had the subs. But I think the key thing for Postecoglou is that he made 9 changes, and yet that amount of changes isn't looking as jarring as it was to begin with. That Coventry game, it still makes me shudder when I think about it, especially the first half, 60 minutes or so. Probably more than that. But you can kind of see now that these players, shock horror, are used to playing alongside each other, and there's a little bit better patterns of play, better fluency to it. And the movement's better as well. they're just starting to understand where each other are on the pitch and knowing each other's game. There's a lot of young, new players as well. A lot of teenagers. Was it 3 teenagers started in that game, unless I missed someone. So just Berval Gray and Moore. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? I'm not forgetting anyone there. Dragishin's only, 21 as well. I'm just double checking I've not forgotten anyone. No, Destiny's obviously older now as well. But yeah, it's that's it really. That's the key, is just finding that fluency and the ability. Now he knows, especially with 3 wins under a belt, that he can continue to change the team in these games. He can allow the likes of Romero, Van der Ven, Solanke, Kulusevski, and either or of Bentancur or Basuma or Maddison or Kulusevski, Johnson as well, to be able to kind of rest. He's able to change teams for these games, and you're not going to see a massive drop in the level. They're not quite the attacking force that they are. It sounds weird to say a Premier League team and a Europa League team, but you know what I mean. It will get to a stage where they're all as comfortable as each other. They're like that, and you can just interchange them into whatever one you want, and you can mix and match, and it'll all work. It's hopefully that's where it'll end up getting to. But so plenty of positives. It wasn't an incredible blow-away kind of everyone performance, but it was a professional European performance. Got the job done. It's Odegaard back as well, like I said, was a good thing. Troy Parrott back at Spurs as well, and I wasn't there, but it sounded like he got a good ovation as well, because he said something I saw in his Instagram post about that. Everything I've read from him has been very respectful about Spurs. He could be maybe a little bit bitter about the lack of chances and the fact that Postecoglou didn't really kind of look at him again properly this summer. But it wasn't at all. He just was like, no, it's a club that took really good care of me, and just wasn't to be. Just wasn't my moment. Wasn't the time I was going to break through. He spoke really, really well about them. And a positive match overall. Very quickly on the West Ham game, which I watched at Toronto Airport. I watched then. It was like, I just managed to squeeze it in before I was flying on. I went to Chicago after that. It's been a bit of I think I explained this in the last video, a bit of a whistle-stop tour of some places, just to kind of go to some places we've never been before. And they've all been amazing. It's been an absolutely great trip so far. But so I watched in Toronto Airport Spurs against West Ham, which was great. It was great fun, especially because there were these weird stats coming out beforehand. We always say this about stats, that you can kind of tailor them to whatever you want them to be. And there was a few I kind of was seeing floating about Spurs and not winning derbies. I was thinking, sure, they're beaten Palace, Brentford, Fulham as well. And then as looked at it a bit closely, it's like, oh, okay. So the original stat was derbies against West Ham, Arsenal, Chelsea. Okay, so it's not really just certain derbies. And I think every time they can just destroy one of these silly little things that kind of is put out there as a negative, it's great. And they absolutely, second half just destroyed them. And again, as I kind of mentioned earlier, a tactical change from Postecoglou. Always key that whenever we kind of say, we've had a couple of games this season where he hasn't changed it maybe quickly enough, and we've spoken about that. This time he saw it at half time, went, no, I need more legs in midfield. I need to kind of win the midfield battle back and bring Sarr on for Maddison. It worked perfectly. So we've got to point towards that and say, there you go. That's exactly what is required. And hopefully, like I say, that's the kind of thing that is remembered, that the next time maybe there's a decision that the fans don't like, or a delay in a substitution, they don't go, oh, he always does that. Always is rubbish and late with his subs. And it's a bit like, well, no, you've just forgotten about the West Ham game, the substitution that essentially won the derby, really. But Sonny was a real positive in that game, absolutely on it from the start. He looked refreshed and raring to go. That early kind of little shimmy and curling shot that went just wide, you just knew, right, Sonny's ready for this. Obviously, a shame not to be able to see him against RZ, but apparently that was the plan anyway, although he was, I think I saw the press conference beforehand. Guesty did his all his stuff from Postecoglou said that he what did he say, he wasn't, it was just a bit sore afterwards, but the plan was always to rest him. So we'll see at the weekend where he's at. I'm sure there'll be another press conference. I presume there'll be another press conference today. I'm pretty sure there is actually. I think it's an early press conference. So, not a great one for Guesty to get to bright and early. But obviously West Ham scored first. Another one of those silly switch-off goals from Spurs. I think mainly a doggy, if I'm going to blame anyone. And a doggy played well for the rest of the game, but in that moment, just gave Bowen far kind of too easy a time to get past him and put that ball across. And then I think it's a difficult one. Defence was kind of dragged across, and maybe it's on Brennan Johnson not seeing that and reacting a little bit too late. And Kudus knocks it into the net. And but then, they could have very quickly got straight back into the game again, and it was the same two players involved. A doggy gets up the pitch, puts the ball across, and Johnson, very similar to kind of Mikey Moore one, just glances it wide of the goal. But they were. Decky was superb. Dejan Kulusevski, and a classic Kulusevski goal, really, wasn't it? Cutting inside, hitting the ball low. This time goes off both bits of woodwork and in. I think Maddison, wasn't it, set it up, and. You can definitely understand at half time where some fans might be a little bit like why are you taking off someone that's great so much, but it was the perfect sub. As soon as that second half kind of kicked off, you just see Spurs suddenly just had something a bit extra about them. I can't remember what the stats were, but I saw some stats first half compared to second half, and the amount of extra kind of miles that were put in and touch of the ball and things like that, and just the difference that Sarr made. And again, that's another young player that is learning all the time and doing, really well, to be honest. He's just kind of developing quite nicely. Probably not getting as many starts as he would have wanted, but he's still developing really well under Postecoglou. The second goal is just beautiful. Son's ball into a doggy is just fabulous. It's so nice, and then Doggy obviously holds the ball up really well and then just tees it up Basuma to hit the ball in. And it was all Spurs really from then on, really, wasn't it? Decky ball into Son was a really nice reverse pass into him, and then Sonny has the shot that goes off the keeper, and then Todibo goes in. Remember Todibo? Do you remember the summer of Todibo? Was it summer or winter? I think it was summer. Another one of those who never ended up being, or he did end up being, he just ended up not being a Tottenham player. And then the fourth goal was lovely from Sonny. It was just like one of those million step over runs, and then a really nice finish, and terrific. And then we had the weird Kudus madness when he just absolutely lost the plot, and people falling to the floor all over the place. Van de Ven, Richarlison was really awkward. Richarlison kind of got knocked into, and then he then bashed into the referee's leg as well. It was all very messy. And then Sarr got smacked in the face as well. I think it was the Sarr one that he went for, wasn't it? Whereas there were a few incidents in there that he could have probably gone for. I saw a Van de Ven interview. I think it was the press conference, wasn't it? He did the pre-RZ press conference, and he was, what did he describe it as? He said he was punched in the face, which... I don't know. I'm trying to think back now. It was a long time ago, but I'm trying to think if it was technically a punch. Just sort of pushed him in the face, smacked him in the face. Can we say? I don't know. But it didn't. Again, it was another one. It was a bit like the Man U game. Like the red card made no difference. I know it came later than, of course, in that game, but ultimately Spurs were running away with it anyway. And it's a good little run of results right now. Obviously, a Palace away is not a simple game. It's a game that over the years where Spurs have had a lot of kind of narrow wins and also disastrous ones. I remember the Nuno one when Jaffet got sent off, wasn't it? Was it 3-0? That was a dreadful game. So yeah, not easy at all. And then you've got Man City in the Carabao Cup straight after at home as well. We'll see what happens with Sonny and whether he's has any kind of lingering after effects. And any of the players that have come back, we're going to see how Richarlison reacts to his first start in a long time. But yeah, it's they've got this foundation at the moment, and that's the key thing. They've got this nice little platform to build on. I still wouldn't say that they're hitting top gear, and that's that's a major thing. I mean, what have they? I can't remember the exact number. Is it 20 goals maybe in these past 8 matches? Someone said to me earlier, or said on social media to me earlier, technically it's 7.5 wins out of 8 because of that first half against Brighton. But I feel like it is 20 goals scored in those 8 games. So yeah, they're kind of. They're still. I don't still feel like they're playing a 90 minutes full throttle. I mean, very few teams do play 90 minutes full throttle, full their complete brand of football. But I still feel Spurs can get better, and that's a massive thing when you've won 7 out of your last 8 games. That's a massive thing if they can keep hitting new levels, especially as the season goes on. And like I say, if you can keep having games like this in Europe where you're playing 9 different players, and they're able to keep on improving their performances, sharpness and rhythm and all of that as well. It should, in theory, fingers crossed, help Spurs as it all goes on, and they'll feel the benefits of it as these games go on, and then you could even get further additions in January to the squad as well. I'd be surprised if there's not 1 or 2, because there's always going to be certain players that maybe want to head off, or Postecoglou just decides it's maybe not quite working for them. We'll see. But on the whole, everyone's kind of pretty much getting their minutes right now. It's whether they feel that's enough for them, I guess. But right, time to head off now, because I didn't even expect it was going to be 37 minutes we're hitting now. I actually thought this was probably going to be about 20, 25 minutes, but you know what I'm like. Once I get talking about Tottenham, it's difficult to stop me. Right, I'm going to head off now. I'm not entirely sure when the next one will be. Like I said, this was a bit of a chance moment that just kind of popped up at the end of a slightly earlier night. What we got? We've got Palace on Sunday. There might be a slim opportunity to do that. We'll see. If not, then I'll do one after the City game as well. Hopefully the positive results keep going, and hopefully they continue to build on what they're doing right now. But it's great. No real complaints right now. It's good fun. All good fun. It's Tottenham Hotspur. It wouldn't be anything else, would it? Of course it would. We know it would. We know it has been. So yeah, we've got to take it when it's 7 wins out of 8. That's great stuff. But of course, many more challenges to come on the road ahead. Right, time to head off. Time to head back for holiday. I shall catch you later. Yeah, look after yourselves, stay safe, and yes, I will indeed catch you later. Goodbye.